Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. We're get started in just a couple minutes, and we have a few more people joining in now, so we'll give them a chance. I'm joined today by Zach, and how's it going, Zach?
What's up, Andrew? Zach Lander-Portnoy here, CRO over at Tricera. Thanks, everyone, for jumping on and kind of joining us on this Tuesday afternoon following a brutal Baltimore Ravens loss in the AFC Championship game on Sunday. We're all still reeling here in Baltimore.
Yeah, we're coming live from our headquarters here in Baltimore. So, we had a team in the playoff, perhaps even the favored team in the playoff.
Some would say it was a favorite team, Super Bowl bound. I think the stinger is going to be when they announce Lamar Jackson's regular season MVP award in less than a week and a half. But, man, a team with such high hopes coming to such a challenging end to the season on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it was a blow for sure.
It's just something that goes to show that any given Sunday, any team and game of inches too with it. It's like one pass here or there, run here or there. It's like it could have gone either way, but this time cards didn't fall in our favor.
Yeah, that's right. That's why they play the game. So. Retool and hopefully come back strong next year.
Come back next year. I'm sure we'll see the playoffs again soon.
Yeah, hopefully. This was the first championship game hosted.
Oh yeah,
here
yes,
in our
it's
city, right?
yeah. For first AFC Championship game, I think since before the Super Bowl era.
The old Colts, maybe.
Yeah. And so.
Yeah.
Not the first Ravens loss in an AFC Championship game that I've bore witness to, but hopefully the last.
Yeah. All right, we've got some people joining here, but we're a couple minutes after, so enough about the
let's dive in.
Rough loss. Let's get into printing, huh?
Let's do it.
So again, thank you for joining the session we have here today, which hopefully is full of some useful information and some action items. We titled it "How to Reduce Print-Related Overhead and Expenses in 2024." We're live right now at the end of January in 2024. So looking at kind of where our modern technologies have us now, things that we can implement right away, but also a little bit of a look at what's coming down the roadmap.
For sure. And, from 27 years in business over here at Tricera, I think what we've come to find is that, for so many organizations, printing is a business critical workflow. But at the end of the day, it's still an area that all IT organizations are looking for ways that they can cut costs and kind of be more efficient with their print management. So very excited to kind of go into some of those objectives that we're seeing, again, our customers, in the field drive towards, and then also share some best practices around some of the solutions that are available out there to kind of get a handle on your print-related overhead and expenses.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and dive in. This data comes from several different industry sources that we've pulled together over the years, including our own customer base and some wider industry information. And really getting a snapshot of the full picture of what costs go into printing. And really, it's kind of eye-opening for IT admins. I'm sure you're familiar with some of these things, but when you really start thinking about even the percentages, I mean, the smallest sliver, that 5%, is the cost it is to buy the printer, and then 95% go around all the rest of the things to support it.
For sure, and I think if we had this on a timeline and kind of timelined it out over the lifespan of a printing infrastructure, I think what you would also see is that small hardware 5% is very much a front end cost, right? It's the upfront. How do I get printing stood up in my environment? You're buying things like printers, print servers, hard disks, things like that. But then all of those operating costs that have to follow around the consumables, the operator intervention, the indirect cost, whether it's the help desk, the support staff, and really taking a look at that total cost of ownership for a printing environment over, I would say, about 5 years is probably what we're seeing in the field right now for, how often most organizations look to sort of refresh the actual hardware that, that's printing. So, taking a look at it like that too, where that 5% is very much just kind of a year one, and then 95% of it is sort of your ongoing, keeping the printing, keeping it up and running.
Yeah, so looking at the technical aspects of that operating cost, the easy one to talk about, of course, is the consumables, paper and ink. Certainly the black and white versus color ink that we'll get into a little bit. But that's something that usually people have a handle on in terms of that's a monthly cost, or at least some kind of regular reoccurring cost that I'm paying out for the cost of that print job. But really just plugging the printer in, what goes into setup, management of actually procuring the device, getting the network infrastructure out there. Granted, you might have Ethernet, Wi-Fi already in place for other things, of course, but it's still all that infrastructure that needs to be in place and getting it to the right location so that the printer itself can be set up, powered, online, and ready to go. And so all of that configuration information, and then you start getting into, okay, well, the drivers and how users are going to access it. And so that whole infrastructure piece all kind of layers into those operating costs, heavy in that early part, like you're talking about, Zach, but really a constant upkeep in the entire environment, and printing is a main piece of that.
For sure. And even on the front end, sort of before anything even comes in an environment, there's planning, there's procurement, again, there's, trying to scope out what do I actually need from a print infrastructure. And I would say, most of our customers today have an existing infrastructure up, we sort of see that out there, but anytime there's sort of some sort of like a refresh of, again, that hardware, there's all of those indirect costs around scoping and planning that go into things also. So, that looking at, again, this, 5%, that's very much just a small percent of the total cost of printing when you look at hardware, operating, and indirect costs.
Yeah, and let me reiterate some of the things you were talking about in that indirect costs. A full 50%, and in our practice, I think that's at least 50%. When you look at the different areas that go into that bucket for what we call indirect costs here, and really it splits into two different categories, one being the support costs and one being end user productivity. So let's start with the support cost. We've kind of touched on that a little bit in terms of operating, but still the ongoing maintenance, unused assets that might be out there and purchased but not used because maybe it's not even recognized or realized. Your help desk costs, that's kind of like where you have your IT staff, be it an administrator that's doing the setup, administrator that's doing the configuration in desktops and EUC, whether it's help desk staff picking up the phone and taking support calls. All of these things layer into a lot of people costs, but the support infrastructure from that IT staffing that goes into those indirect costs.
For sure. I love that you brought up kind of unused assets. And we see with printers all the time, these enterprise organizations that buy, thousands of printers and then, don't necessarily have a great handle on where they are, who's printing what's going on in the environment kind of after things get deployed. And, especially with printing, we see probably far too much redundancy out there than probably what's actually needed based off of, what printers are really, handling most of the jobs or most of the workload. So unused assets ends up being a huge cost that organizations will take on that they might not even know about until, post-deployment.
Yeah. And the last thing to highlight here on this slide is what I mentioned with the end user productivity. And I think this is probably the most overlooked in terms of the time equation. And that is, for every user going to use one of these printers, what's the time that it takes to connect or select a printer, to understand kind of from the application point of view and from my interaction with the desktop, making sure that I have a printer that I can access. How long is the login time extended because of the printing process? How long am I waiting for print jobs to go through from the application, through the spooler, out through the network? And so, and lastly, if a user has to pick up the phone and call the help desk staff, it's really like a double penalty, so to speak, in terms of time, where your help desk staff is focused on printing when they could be doing other things, and the user is taking their time away from what's productive in their job and for the business. And so when we really look at that user productivity, we kind of think of it in terms of just like, user satisfaction. Are they happy? Can they print? Yes or no? But when you really get down to it, what time is being lost and lost productivity, which is really important for the business because of printing? And there's a lot of that you can uncover when you really dig into it. So our next slide really looks at some of these averages, and obviously there's a wide variety of companies across industries. But the stat that has been fairly consistent through the years that we've been looking at this is somewhat surprising, at least to me still, is this 1 to 3% of company revenue is on average spent on printing. So, just, round numbers, let's take a $100 million company. You're talking about over $1 million just on the cost for printing. And so there's really, when you start kind of uncovering all those different operating and indirect costs, it really adds up.
For sure. And again, the one that still kills me is that 50%, right? So like on average that, a help desk, organization, half their tickets coming in are related to printers, printing, print drivers, print management, print servers, print something that's just taking up really half of that support team's time. And so again, when you look at those indirect costs from an operational perspective, if you've got, 10 help desk technicians, and five, really 5 of them end up being like full-time employees just supporting print in the environment, that help desk call burden, especially with that double penalty if end users are calling in and then those are physical, calls and time involved trying to troubleshoot that stuff, the 50% number still blows me away.
Definitely. And then that escalation point, again, on average, 15% of those are escalated up. And so you think about different roles on the help desk, you might have people that are actually going out and physically updating or managing the printers. But as those tickets get escalated, now you're looking at maybe EUC admins or desktop admins or infrastructure admins that need to then be focused on printing. When obviously they have a wide array of responsibilities within the IT organization and the business in general. So as we can pull back on the amount of time spent in both the help desk and those escalated cases, it's really enabling full featured out to the rest of the infrastructure and environment.
Yeah, what kills me about the escalated cases sometimes too is, how long they'll sit in escalated status. If for whatever reason, again, there's something that needs to be procured to fix it. Again, a printer needs to be refreshed or somebody has to go, be sent on site to like physically troubleshoot or like, reconfigure a piece of hardware. Like those escalated tickets that just sit open until they're, again, finally resolved via some sort of additional human interaction is a very high number.
Which then circles back to the user story. When that case is sitting there unresolved, those are users that can't print.
They're down, yeah.
And so obviously different businesses see printing as a different priority level. Some companies that may not be like a system down situation, but we work with clients all the time where printing is an absolutely critical piece of the infrastructure. Take hospital environments or businesses that rely on a print process in the normal productivity workflow. And if that piece is broken, the whole workflow is stale.
For sure. And the two scenarios that, we always see most frequently is, printing that's connected to a revenue operation or printing that's connected in healthcare to patient care. And, if it's connected to a revenue operation, like, contracts billing or something like that, we know that if printing stops, then revenue stops. And if it's in healthcare where it's directly connected to your ability to deliver patient care, not having printing work the way it needs to work can slow down and does slow down your ability to, get discharge papers out to patients. And so those are, two of the examples that we see most frequently where, when printing is directly connected to a revenue operation or in healthcare, it's very much business critical.
Definitely. So this slide, I think it kind of recaps some of what we talked about. I think we highlighted user productivity and the help desk workload just to kind of shed a little more light on those administrative overheads. Certainly there's processes to manage printing, but when you talk about an enterprise scaling out in terms of the number of platforms and technologies, the different desktop types, especially if you're looking at like EUC or server-based computing, these are all technologies where going beyond just having a user with a Windows desktop that gets a driver installed from Windows Update. And so when you look at kind of the amount of time it takes, again, back to that time equation of, okay, you might be able to get a printer deployed to a user, but what's the hassle and can it be done in an efficient, effective way, in a dynamic and intelligent way? And when we start looking at the modern software approaches, giving an easy approach, not just to assign a printer, kind of one by one, but be able to do it in a dynamic way so that based on who the user is, their groups. You've already set all of this stuff up in the system. Let the print management leverage those same kind of assignments so that based on what network they're in, what building they're in, what their permissions are, and then have their printers assigned dynamically based on that information. And so that saves you time as an administrator. You're also delivering a better service out to your end user. And as they're connecting in these different platforms, maybe there's a cloud desktop, maybe there's on-prem, maybe some SaaS applications, but keep consistency throughout all that using a modern print management platform.
Yeah, I think the user productivity piece is huge. It's so funny. We comment, from in our personal lives, we have access to all, such amazing, again, technology and software applications. And then you kind of get into the enterprise and it's like, well, what's going on here? Like, why can't I do the same things? And you see it, whether it's, mobile devices and, kind of the touch experience, all the way up to like print management and kind of like how much more challenging it is to get a handle on this in, like a server-based environment. Versus like in your home life where you're like, oh, just plug the printer in, it just works. Why can't I? Well, you can't do that at a hospital or healthcare organization that's managing, thousands of end users and hundreds of printers across, tens of locations. And so those that disconnect is, I think, where it really hits people. Is there a better way? Are there solutions out there that can, help me give people kind of call it the consumer experience or the personal experience that they're used to in their own lives.
Yeah, and I don't think we've even touched on yet the work from home scenario. Obviously, step number one, get connectivity to the back-end infrastructure, make sure their applications and data can be delivered to their remote location. But then printing comes up, and how do those workflows? It might still be printing to network printers back at the home office, or it might be printing to a location close to them, depending on the business workflows you have. So I think that pretty well, Zach, covers a look kind of behind the scenes and digging into some of those different areas and hopefully thinking through, okay, there is a big amount of money spent on printing within an IT department, whether you have dedicated resources or it's just kind of like a shared responsibility. And then as you look across, like in that pie chart across these different areas, we see huge opportunities where, okay, if 50% is that indirect cost, let's say part of that is help desk cost or operational time. If we can scale that back, sure, we can't take it to zero, but if we can improve it by 50%, 60, 70%, that's an opportunity for substantial savings.
For sure. And I think, modern software solutions that do things like driver management, dynamic assignments, again, having, users empowered to, have some level of that self-service personalization, and then being able to deliver it with, the same cloud infrastructure that, most of your applications, today are probably managed in is really where, again, we see kind of the market delivering products to solve a lot of the problems that we've discussed.
Definitely. Yeah. And, you were just talking about the home use case or a personal use case of, just plug it in and it comes down from Windows Update. But that driver management becomes such a time suck in the enterprise environment when you just have to, just logistically managing it, not to mention actually getting it deployed out there. And it, driver management really hits all the different aspects we were talking about. If there's an automated driver management through a virtual driver or a driver distribution method, like from a centralized database, that's more efficient for the administrator. It gets operational to the user faster. And also, if you look at login times, again, that's kind of an overlooked area. But if we can shave, seconds off of a login time every time a user logs in by having the right driver deployed effectively to that system, you've now saved the administrator time. And then time and time again, you're getting dividends. Maybe it's only a few seconds every time, but that adds up real fast in terms of the productivity savings that you can get.
For sure. And, I think of, again, a roaming worker or a mobile worker or, a nurse or a doctor in a healthcare environment that's moving from room to room or station to station. You're getting that productivity every single session login, every single time they log in. And that could be, 30, 40, 50 times a day for healthcare professionals. And what's needed in those environments is, again, the ability to deliver the same experience to that user, which is the healthcare professional, regardless of what room, what wing, what department, or what building they're in. and doing it again, 30, 40, 50 times a day is where you see a lot of the benefits there.
Yeah. Speaking of some best practices, I think of that cloud services bubble, and I think in today's world, a lot of times it's just like, oh yes, certainly, let's do a cloud service. But one of the things we see, one of the more dynamic ways to look at how is most effective to manage your print environment is really taking a strong look at, okay, you have applications and data, probably some of that coming from the cloud, especially from SaaS applications. Where are your desktops? Are they actually logging into desktops in the cloud? Or are they still using full-blown desktops locally? Are they thin clients locally? Obviously, we've talked quite a bit about in other sessions about ultimately the print job has to come down to where I am. And so back to the best practice, really taking an important look at where the desktop, like where the print job's originating, and then where it needs to get to. And then that might be, okay, a full-blown cloud service. It might be something in between. It might be something where printing is best still installed on-prem. And having that flexibility makes a big difference in environments.
For sure, and it's unique with printing, to your point, because in order for printing to function, the physical printer, the job, the paper, the documents, they can't just exist in the digital world. They have to be physically next to you, and so you have to make those connection points where you're managing things like the drivers and the applications in the digital world in a cloud, in a cloud environment, but still have some sort of an infrastructure. The actual hardware is on-prem, and so how do you manage things again in more of that hybrid model, and continue to do so again with efficiency is kind of the best practice that we see employed a lot.
Yeah, and this is where these modern print solutions really make a difference, because you do get that flexibility, at least for many of them. If you look at, if I'm still trying to manage by like group policy object or scripts, as I move my applications and desktops to different areas, potentially in the cloud, it puts a real strain on some of those traditional management types. Over and above what was already difficult before. And so having something that can adapt to those situations, something that you definitely want to look for in one of these modern solutions.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say on the dynamic assignments, to your point, is like, especially for large enterprise organizations where you have role changes, promotions, onboardings, offboardings, like a very fluid roster to try and manage that through some of those more legacy management styles versus having something that's a little more dynamic that can keep up with the pace and the churn of the turnover and the new hires. Again, is really where you can get tremendous benefits from modern software solutions.
Definitely. As we transition to look at more of like the consumption areas where we can offer savings, I do want to highlight another feature thing for modern software solutions, which is giving access to more advanced print features like pin code printing or follow me printing, other ways of like hold solutions and integration with other systems. And it kind of goes to the driver management, it kind of goes to user self-service. I mean, it kind of covers all of these areas, but making sure to offer the full capabilities of the devices that you have to make sure that you can add security to these solutions and also reduce waste by making sure that a user is actually printing to the right location and picking up the print jobs when they go to get it. And to transition over, part of modern print management solutions are looking at the actual usage. And so getting some reporting data so we can see different pieces of information about how printing is operating within the environment.
Yeah, I mean, the number one place to, again, get started for a lot of organizations that are trying to get a handle on, their print related overhead expenses is just understanding like what people are printing, how much are they printing, who's printing to what, who's, burning through the color toner versus, again, can we restrict them to black and white? How many printers do I have that are actually taking on a workload that's worth keeping them out there and installed? And so, trying to get a handle on sort of, I would say, these basic, reporting or analytics, and some of these data points, that's got to be step one. It's, in 2024, the first step in getting a handle on it is really to just look at the data.
That's right. Yeah. And making sure you're collecting that information, seeing who, what department, what printers are used, and that kind of helps with the unused assets. You can really see what's being used, what's not, and centralize your efforts in the right locations.
And especially, with, so I think of like the consumables costs. Typically what we'll see is that sort of 3 times the, cost of a piece of hardware, a printer, is spent, in the lifetime of kind of keeping the consumables replenished. In a printer, with good reporting and analytics, you're able to understand how much and how many, what does your consumables replenishment need to look like, how frequently, how many boxes, how many, rolls of labels or boxes of paper do you need? And, there's savings there. So you're not like overpaying on, overnight shipping for, getting things to, remote locations, things like that. So being able to use the reporting and turn it into actionable data to then again, maintain a lower, operational burden, operational cost of forecasting out the consumables replenishments is a huge way to take action on the data once you started to gather it.
Right, and we have AI insights on this slide here in 2024 at the beginning. We're kind of in the early phases of software commonly integrating in certain AI or machine learning technologies. We're going to see this as this year progresses as well. And like other things, AI is not a magic bullet in terms of what it's going to be able to do. It's not going to suddenly reload paper in your printer, but it is something that as a tool can help maybe draw insights faster, maybe alert to error conditions that are out there for printers, and so that there can be faster response times. And so I think just being able to pull out information and being able to act on it much quicker is going to be one of the true benefits of AI as we go forward in the software.
For sure, and I'll take from one, Bill McDermott, the CEO of ServiceNow, just kind of had a great podcast the other day saying, 2024 has to be the year that AI becomes our friend. We have to stop fearing it, and we just have to embrace it as just like a normal part of our lives, not necessarily a magic bullet. But the same way, the launch of, again, smartphones and mobile devices was sort of this leap forward for individual personal computing to some extent. AI is continues to be sort of that accelerator, and these simple, easy use cases are definitely where where organizations can start to see huge benefits.
Definitely, I'm quite excited about this, and again, by putting in place these modern software or modern print management technologies, you're not only gaining all of the expertise and experience already built up by, in some cases like Screwdriver's 20 plus years, but you're also then in a great position to leverage all these new technologies as they continue to build into the systems. So some of this is a wrap up in terms of what we were just talking about and kind of the main highlights in terms of where we can see reduction in costs. I do want to take a quick moment just to reiterate that we do have a question and answer panel in the webinar. And so if there's any questions that come up as we're going through this, please make sure to put that in there and we'll answer it at the end.
Yeah, number one on the left, like we said, reduction in paper and ink consumption. So, we've got 95% of the total cost of printing sitting in operating and non-hardware indirect costs. 3 times the amount spent on the printers themselves, spent on, papers and consumable items, getting a handle on that, understanding what you're buying, where it's going, and whether or not you're efficient with, again, your procurement and your usage, getting just, moderate reductions in paper and ink consumption is a huge way to reduce, the operating costs of printing, and then also continue to drive more efficiencies in your replenishment processes.
Definitely. These are processes that can all be improved just from that visibility that you can gain. And then you look across at the streamlined administrative processes in terms of that admin efficiency being faster for the user. Overall, it's just a much better service being offered out to the users, and you get a greatly reduced help desk burden. And those resources then can be applied to other areas in the IT team to make sure that the service is better in all other ways. But it's really those dividends that we talked about in terms of time savings, both on the upfront piece, but then as it goes, you're constantly saving by having these kind of dynamic and flexible processes that you can use with printing.
Yeah, and optimizing again your maintenance process, and not waiting for that first printer to go down, for then a user to find out, to then call the help desk, to then open up a ticket, to then resolve it, trying to get ahead of that and gain insights, so the moment that printer stops working, the moment there's a paper jam, the moment that thing's out of ink, you're getting some sort of a notification alert. You can, just get ahead of it just a little bit. I mean, even if that avoids, one help desk call from some frustrated end user who then, again, productivity will stop while they work to resolve that ticket with the help desk, and then the help desk, technician can go back to doing something else. Optimizing that maintenance process by getting just a little bit more visibility into what's happening live in your print environment is really a huge way that you can make an impact on your operating costs.
Definitely. Let's take a look at a couple case studies that we've done here at TriSare, and these are just 3 examples. And you'll notice a common theme about the efficiency gains, and time is really where that comes up. But we see a couple of different in terms of healthcare, a bank. The one that really stands out for me, Zach, is that 87% reduction in help desk calls at First State Bank. What a massive change. And by just adding in a solution where sometimes printing isn't the most visible or top of mind, but when you can layer in a solution that goes into your environment and can deliver that kind of reduction, I mean, that's game changing.
No, we see, a lot of it we see as sort of an easy button, because it makes such an impact, again, on the total volume of help desk calls and the support piece of it. So just again, a couple few really good examples of some organizations that we've seen get tremendous benefit, from modern software solutions to help them reduce their print-related overhead and expenses.
Yeah. And with that in mind, based on the information that we've talked about in this presentation already, in terms of data from the industry about the cost breakdowns and some estimates, kind of some raw numbers, we have put together an interactive calculator on our website, again, using certain assumptions, but it helps kind of pull back some of the layers of printing. And so this is a cost calculator. It's we'll send out the URL, but you can get to it through the resources page on the TriSare website. And so scrolling down on this page, you can add in here, kind of just take an estimate of the number of support cases that you get in, the number of hours that you might work on print-related cases, or really print-related anything across your IT staff. So here's, let me do 50 tickets a day, 300 hours a week for an IT staff. Maybe a slightly larger example, but quickly shows with industry averages, it might be $500,000 in this specific case. And we do highlight here, there's that 1% to 3% number that we talked about, kind of how we get to that number. It's not just, pulling it out of nothing. Let me do a slightly smaller case here of like 30 tickets a week. And that's just total support cases. Let me say a few people, time. And even in the smaller example,
it's still significant.
Yeah, and so again, it's not going to go to 0, but it could be more than 50% savings in this case by layering in a solution.
Yeah, so check it out. It's on the website. Again, we'll send out the link afterwards. But again, easy things first. Like start getting a handle of what your total cost of printing looks like. Based off of those indirect costs. Use the calculators that again we provided out there to start wrapping your head around it. Please continue to use that as a resource to understand your total cost of ownership of printing.
Yeah, and again, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We've gotten a couple. I think one was here about the assumptions, and I think we probably answered it here on this slide in terms of talking about. And if you want to go through yourself with the if you want to go through that yourself with seeing some of the breakdowns and the assumptions that were made in there, and then how it compares to your business, I think that's, you'll start seeing that. And it's information that, not like, let's say if you're an IT administrator role, that's something that could be used across your team to really drive those efficiencies forward.
Absolutely.
And then I think the other question here is where we see the most impact. For me personally, I think the main area, again, is in terms of admin time, being able to deploy not just the same thing that they already have, but a better solution, more dynamic, less driver management. So in other words, I'm giving my users something better than they had at less time for myself as an admin. And that makes a huge impact really quickly after installing one of these solutions.
Huge impact. And then once everything is stood up, once you have that solution up and running, having some sort of a way to continue to get actionable data from your print environment so that you can get a better handle on your data, your usage, the metrics there, and be able to take action on them when it comes to replenishment and maintenance of your print environment.
Definitely. So any parting words here? I think we went through hopefully some visibility, some information into where those costs might be lying, and areas that are just ripe for savings.
For sure, they're everywhere in a print environment, especially within an enterprise print environment. So, yeah, please take the time to leverage the total cost of ownership print calculator on the website. Please reach out, contact us, talk to us, to get, again, just a better look into, what is likely a way to really reduce your print-related overhead and expenses in your environment.
We talk to individuals all the time, and what we love doing from an engineering solution is listening to what you're facing right now in terms of your environment, your printing needs, your user needs, and seeing how a solution can just layer directly on, and doing that in an easy way. So like you said, please reach out. We love having those conversations, and we'll take a look at your specifics. All right, Zach, I appreciate you joining me today. Thank you all for joining and watching, and hopefully we speak to you outside of this. But
thank you all for joining. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.